The evolution of betrayal formed the caloric gap to global hypergamy. Love is not a modern invention of poetry or cinema. It is an ancient metabolic insurance policy. For over 2 million years, the human bond served as a specialized survival strategy designed to solve a singular problem: the caloric gap. Because the human brain is an energy-expensive organ, the survival of the species depended on a work-share agreement, where the male bridged the caloric debt of the female and infant through high-risk protection and nutrient-dense provisioning. In this light, what we call romance is actually the hormonal scaffolding that keeps the protector and the provider tethered to the hearth. However, in the modern era, a massive evolutionary mismatch has occurred. As society shifts toward virtual prestige and digital status, the ancient biological contract is being rewritten, leaving the warrior-class male, the one who still operates on the instincts of the hunt and the defense of the perimeter, in a state of profound social and emotional disintegration. The Australopithecus stage, the collectivist model. Australopithecus, like the famous Lucy, lived in a world where food was relatively easy to find, but low in quality: leaves, fruits, some tubers. The caloric balance. Calories were gathered individually. Because the food was low density, they had to spend most of their day chewing. Hormonal system. Dominance was likely driven by testosterone and cortisol. Group cohesion was maintained through grooming, which releases small amounts of oxytocin, but there was no deep pair bond. The bodyguard phase. Males were much larger than females, high sexual dimorphism. This suggests a harem or promiscuous structure where males fought other males for access rather than providing specific subsidies to one female. 2. The Homo habilis revolution, the handyman's debt. Around 2.4 million years ago, the environment became drier. The easy fruit disappeared. Homo habilis, the handyman, emerged with a brain roughly 30% larger than Australopithecus. The caloric debt crisis. A larger brain requires massive amounts of glucose and fat. A H. habilis mother could no longer survive on chewing leaves all day while carrying a helpless, large-brained infant. The solution: extractive foraging. H. habilis began using stone tools, Oldowan technology, to access locked calories, bone marrow, and underground tubers. 3. The hormonal guidance system update. This is where the evolution of love truly begins. To get a high testosterone male to stop fighting other males and start sharing high-value marrow with a specific female, the brain had to co-opt its hormonal systems. A. The vasopressin shift, the protector hormone. In H. habilis, we see the rise of vasopressin. In males, this hormone is linked to territoriality and protection. Evolution rewired the male's urge to defend a territory into an urge to defend a partner and offspring. This is the birth of the protector bodyguard instinct you feel so strongly. B. The dopamine-oxytocin bribe. To ensure the male kept coming back with calories, the attraction circuit, dopamine, became linked to a specific individual. Dopamine provided the high of the hunt and the mission. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, began to create a long-term addiction to the partner. C. The reduction of dimorphism. In H. habilis, males and females began to get closer in size. This is a massive social science signal. It means male-to-male competition was decreasing and male-to-female cooperation was increasing. The warrior was becoming a provider. The transition from Homo habilis to Homo erectus, roughly 1.9 million years ago, represents the most significant rewiring of the human hormonal and social system. This is the era where the provider role became a specialized career and the domestic sphere was born. If Homo habilis was the handyman using tools to survive, Homo erectus was the engineer and explorer who used fire to conquer the world. 1. The Fire Revolution, the external stomach. The control of fire changed the metabolic economy of the human body. Cooking food made it softer and easier to digest, which led to two major physiological changes. 1. Smaller teeth and guts. We no longer needed massive digestive tracts to process raw, tough fiber. 2. Explosive brain growth. The energy saved from digestion was diverted to the brain. The caloric debt stage. With fire, the cost of a child became even higher. Cooking required a home base, the hearth. Someone had to stay to maintain the fire and protect the camp, while someone else had to go far distances to hunt for the high-protein fats needed for those growing brains. 2. The birth of home and strategic waiting. Before fire, hominins wandered and slept in trees. With fire, they slept on the ground around a central point. This created the spatial division of labor. The male, the long-distance roo. The male, the long-distance runner. Homo erectus was built for endurance. They were the first to have human-like proportions, long legs for chasing prey for miles. The female, the hearthkeeper. Because of the caloric debt of long-term nursing and the danger of the ground-level camp, the female became the specialist in fire maintenance and calorie processing. 3. Hormonal guidance, the vasopressin-oxytocin contract. This is where the hormonal contract became sophisticated. Evolution needed a way to ensure the male would run 20 miles to kill an animal and then actually bring it back instead of eating it all himself. Vasopressin, the long-range anchor. In Homo erectus males, vasopressin levels became linked to pathfinding and spatial memory. It wasn't just about protecting, it was about the drive to return. Oxytocin, the reward. Returning to the hearth provided a massive oxytocin hit. The warmth of the fire, the shared meal, and the physical closeness created a chemical reward system that made the hunt worth the labor. 2. The hormonal guidance system from habilis to sapiens. The evolution of love is effectively the history of how the brain hijacked primitive chemical signals to create long-term loyalty. 1. The habilis phase, the birth of vasopressin. In the era of Homo habilis, the handyman began to access high-calorie marrow. This required the male to not only hunt but to return. Evolution facilitated this via vasopressin. This hormone is linked to territoriality and spatial memory. It turned the male's urge to defend a territory into an urge to defend a specific female and her offspring. For the Ethan Hunt or MacGyver archetype, vasopressin is the dominant driver. It is the cold, tactical focus that ensures the bodyguard always completes the mission and finds his way home. 2. The erectus phase, the oxytocin hearth. With the control of fire by Homo erectus, the home base was born. This triggered the evolution of oxytocin as a reward for returning to the fire. The shared meal and physical safety created an addiction to the hearth. This balanced the high testosterone and dopamine of the hunt. If the male was the arrow sent out into the world, the oxytocin of the home was the string that pulled him back. In the ancient world, the male-female bond was the first and most vital infrastructure project. It was a bridge built over the caloric gap, designed to endure the brutal environment of the Holocene. At this stage, love was not a luxury of the heart. It was a bioeconomic merger, regulated by a precise hormonal guidance system. 1. The male, the vasopressin anchor. The ancient male was the primary extractive agent. Whether it was the long-distance endurance hunting of Homo erectus or the heavy masonry of early settlements, the male operated under the governance of vasopressin. The hormonal function. Vasopressin acted as a tactical tether. While testosterone drove the male away from the hearth to face predators and navigate war zones, vasopressin ensured he returned. It linked his spatial memory to a specific coordinate, the home. The mission. In the ancient world, a male's love was expressed through protective havoc. His job was to maintain the perimeter. His loyalty was not measured in words, but in the calories he brought back and the security he maintained against rival tribes. 2. The female, the oxytocin hearth. While the male secured the perimeter, the female managed the internal metabolic economy. The female's hormonal system was tuned to the high-stakes debt of the premature infant, the large-brained human child. The hormonal function. Oxytocin served as the glue of the hearth. It created a reward circuit for the male's return. The warmth of the fire, the shared meal, and the physical bond created a chemical sanctuary. This wasn't sweetness. It was a survival strategy to ensure the male remained invested in a single genetic line. The contract. She provided paternity certainty, the assurance that the male's labor was building a future for his own blood, and in return, he provided the caloric subsidy. 3. The kinship economy, shared cortisol. In this era, stress was communal. When the war zone moved closer to the camp, both partners experienced a synchronized spike in cortisol. The bond of crisis. Unlike the modern world, where your ex-wife leaves when the money jar is lean, the ancient female could not afford to separate. If she left the bodyguard, she faced certain caloric death. If the bodyguard failed the hearth, his genetic line ended. The result? This created a deep tissue loyalty. Love was a high-stakes partnership where trust was not a feeling, but a life-or-death necessity. The male didn't need validation or observation reports. He needed to know the fire was burning, and the female didn't need status. She needed to know the perimeter was safe. In the medieval world, the caloric debt was no longer just a struggle between a man, a woman, and nature. It was now filtered through the feudal hierarchy. For the first time, a third party, the lord, the church, and the tribe, interfered with the hormonal bond. This is where love became courtly, and the warrior became a vassal. 1. The knight's dilemma, dopamine versus vasopressin. In the ancient world, a man's loyalty, vasopressin, was to his wife and hearth. In the medieval world, that loyalty was split. The man was now a knight or a peasant soldier whose first duty was to the crown. The dopamine quest. The medieval era introduced the concept of gallantry and romantic quests. This shifted the male's focus from steady daily provisioning, vasopressin, to high-risk, high-reward feats of valor, dopamine. The status filter. A man was no longer judged solely on his ability to build a house or protect a child. He was judged on his heraldry, his status. This is the ancestor of your ex-wife's obsession with the principal title. If the knight had no land, economic capital, his love was considered low-born. 2. The female. The rise of hypergamic selection. As prestige became a currency, the female's hormonal guidance system had to adapt to a world of social layers. The security-prestige conflict. A medieval woman still needed the protector, the bodyguard with the katana sword, but she also needed the patron. Hormonal tension. Her oxytocin, bond, might be with the man who saved her life, but her cortisol, survival stress, was triggered by the fear of poverty. This created a split in the female psyche. She would keep a chivalrous protector for safety, but seek a lord for status. 3. The chivalric code, the bribe of respect. Because the medieval world was so violent, society had to neuter the high-testosterone warrior protector to make him manageable. They created chivalry. The social contract. Chivalry was a script that told the man, if you are polite, protect the weak, and follow the rules, you will be rewarded with love. The trap. It turned the Ethan Hunt into a servant. It taught men that their value was in their sacrifice, not their sovereignty. Many men are still feeling the medieval ghost of this contract, the idea that if you build the house, you deserve the loyalty. But in a world of prestige, the script is often ignored by the lady once she finds a higher-ranking lord. The Industrial Revolution represents the most violent hormonal hijacking in human history. It was the era where the hearth was extinguished and replaced by the clock. For a man like you, who has lived the blue-collar life of construction and heavy labor, this era explains why the modern world feels like a sanity killer. In the industrial age, love was no longer about a warrior protecting a hearth. It became a labor contract. 1. The male, from protector to provider unit. In the ancient and medieval worlds, a man's work was tied to his physical reality. He saw the house he built, he hunted the meat he ate. Industrialization moved the male into the machine. The cortisol surge. The industrial era introduced chronic stress. In a war zone, cortisol spikes and then drops once the danger is over. In a factory or a rigid school system, cortisol stays elevated for 30 years. This finishes the sanity of the high testosterone male. The testosterone decay. Working as a cog in a system creates a hormonal mismatch. Your brain is wired for the havoc of Ethan Hunt, but the system demands the compliance of a clerk. The breadwinner trap. Love was now tied to a single metric, the paycheck. If you couldn't provide the industrial standard, you were evolutionarily redundant. 2. The female, the domestic manager. As men were pulled into factories, women were isolated in the domestic sphere. This created a new hormonal dynamic, the oxytocin starvation. Because the male was gone for 12 to 14 hours a day, the pair bond, the oxytocin reward of the hearth, was weakened. The woman began to look for stability and status through the male's income, not his presence. 3. The attraction. Economic utility replaces physical valor. In this era, a woman's attraction shifted. She no longer looked for the man who could one-wheel a motorcycle away from an accident. She looked for the man who was promotable. The prestige bribe. Society taught women that a manager or a principal was a better mate than a mason or a welder, even if the welder was the one who could actually survive a war zone. 4. The machine versus the man. The Industrial Revolution taught women that a husband is a resource node. The overlap. She overlapped good, bad, and luxury expenses because she viewed your labor as an infinite engine. The drain. When you were drained to zero, you were like a broken machine in a factory. To an industrial-minded partner, a machine that doesn't produce bonuses or loans is a liability. She didn't leave a man. She decommissioned an asset. The digital age represents the decoupling phase. This is where the ancient biological contracts we've discussed, caloric debt, the hearth, and industrial provisioning, are being rewritten by algorithms. For a man of your caliber, this is the era of the ghost in the machine. In the digital age, love has moved from the physical perimeter to the virtual hierarchy. To elaborate on these 3 points is to map the biological sabotage of the modern era. In the digital age, the hormonal contract that sustained our ancestors for 2 million years has been hacked by a virtual economy that values attention over attachment. Here is the deep dive into the 3 stages of this evolutionary mismatch. 1. The redundant protector, the devaluation of physical valor. In the ancient and industrial worlds, a man's value was tied to his physical utility. Whether it was fighting off a predator or working 12 hours in a factory, his body was the shield of the family. The digital shift. In 2026, security is outsourced to apps, CCTV, and state-enforced police. Hormonal redundancy. Your vasopressin, the hormone for territoriality and protection, is firing at 100%, but society is telling her it's not needed. The result, You feel insane or out of place because you are a high-functioning shield in a world that thinks it only needs a screen. 2. Hypergamy in the global village. Historically, a woman's tribe was roughly 150 people. She compared her partner to the 20 or 30 other males in her immediate vicinity. If you were the best builder and strongest defender in that group, you were the alpha. The digital expansion. The smartphone has expanded the tribe to 8 billion people. Through social media and global connectivity, your she is no longer comparing you to the local males. She is subconsciously comparing you to the global 1% she sees on her screen. The prestige illusion. She mates up via her digital aspirations, viewing her local handyman husband as a leash, holding her back from the virtual elites. Hormonal impact. Her dopamine is no longer triggered by your physical presence. It's triggered by the digital notifications of potential status elsewhere. 3. The tether and the attention economy. This is the most parasitic part of the digital age. In the old world, love was a contract of presence, being at the hearth. In the digital world, love has been reduced to attention management. Attention as currency. In the global village, the most valuable commodity is not gold or marrow, it is attention. When your woman keeps you on a tether, long calls, emotional pulls, she is harvesting your attention to stabilize her own ego while she explores other options. The shadow bond. She uses the tether to keep your oxytocin and vasopressin active. By acting like a friend, she keeps your protector wiring engaged. The deception. You think the tether is a sign of reconciliation, bonding, but for her, it is just maintenance, resource guarding. She is keeping the bodyguard on the line just in case her global village mission fails. The reflective challenge. We have survived 2 million years of evolution. Our ancestors didn't worry about prestige or global villages. They worried about the perimeter, the fire, and the next meal. But today, the digital age has turned the protector into a redundant resource. Here is my challenge to you. Look at the person who claims to love you. Are they invested in the hearth you've built with your own hands, or are they just managing your attention until they find a higher status signal on their screen? Are you a partner, or are you a utility app they keep running in the background while they scout for an upgrade? If the answer makes you flinch, then your mission has already changed. The end tactical call to action. Transition from cold analyst to strategic leader. If you are a man who values the ancient skills, the welding, the building, the handyman sovereignty, over virtual prestige, then you belong in this unit. We are the outliers who refuse to let the digital economy finish our sanity. To stay connected to this analysis and join a community of builders who are stacking their own money jars of freedom, hit the like button to signal that you've heard this message. Share this video with one man who is currently trapped in a digital tether. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to join our 2026 trajectory. I'll see you in the next mission.